Welcome back, everyone. In this video, we are going to build up the application so that we add some functionality to it. Currently, we got a HTML that is static. It doesn't really do anything for us, but it does have the layout and style of our application. So I want to start by building some of the basic functionalities, like being able to display the list of to-dos that I have, maybe add a to-do here. And so before we do any of these, we have to think about the variables or the state of the application. So every app needs to have a state, and a state is the data that basically drives what you see on the user interface, what the user sees basically. And generally, the way you can think about your application is that the user works with the application. As a result of it, the state changes, and that results in UI change. So this is a sort of a mental model. So user interaction, a state change, and then UI changes. Probably the low-hanging fruit to think about here is to have a list of to-dos. So let's say to-dos, and let's just go for an array. All right, so a simple array, and we can maybe just have things like buy milk, I bread. So it could be just text, and if we try to think a little ahead of ourselves and think about, all right, what are the other things that we probably need to associate with a to-do? Maybe a to-do needs to also know if it is completed or not. Like from the way we put the app together, it seems like you can mark them as completed. You can see like how many left. You can filter between the ones that are completed or not. So what we can do is we can have like another array to like maybe array of booleans that correspond to each element here. And then we would mark it as true or false if it's completed or not. I think a better way of doing this is to make each to-do to be an object that stores all of the information that it needs. So it's going to look something like this. It's an object. Let's say it has a text, which is like buy milk. And then it has like a status, which is something like completed. And we can say maybe false because it's not completed. So we can expand this to our other to-do as well. Maybe let's make another one so that there is like one that is completed, and let's say buy jam. All right. Now, the other thing that we got to be careful with is some easy way to get hold of different to-dos. And so that could be like the text of it. If we assume that we can expect the user to have like unique to-dos, like that logically makes sense, right? Like why would you like repeat the same to-do? But what if, for example, the user keeps the list of all their to-dos from several weeks ago, and it just happened that, every few weeks they got to buy milk. So they don't clear the completed one. They just mark them as completed, right? So then they're going to be a bunch of different buy milk that some of them are already completed and maybe one it's not completed. So then if you want to uniquely find that element, you have to consider both of these attributes. And again, the user may just make a mistake and write the same to-do twice. So what I'm trying to get at is a lot of times when people design data models like this, they give a ID. They try to give a unique ID to each let's say to-do or each data item that they have. And this is not necessarily something that you would show it to your user. It's more like an underlying logic in your application. You will see this a whole lot if you work with databases. So I'm going to try to model that idea here as well. So we can give this an ID attribute, and for simplicity, we're just going to go with like integers. So let's say 1 and 2 and 3. Right, so 2, 3. And we don't need to display this on the UI. This is for our own internal working. And when you create a new to-do, you just give it an ID with a new value. And one of the simple ways that you can do this, so that you don't have to worry about, oh, what if I add a to-do with this ID and then I delete it and then I add a new one. You can try to use auto-incrementing integers. That's again one of the very simple common strategies in databases, so that the IDs only ever increase. And a simple way that we can try to create a similar logic here without making it too complex for this simple application is to hold a variable that, let's say, it's always ready for our next to-do. So something like let next to-do ID. And right now that value should be 4. right? And so as I like add to-dos, I always make sure that this is basically like the next integer, so it's always ready to be used to store the next ID that I want. I think that's probably good enough for us to mark this as like the state of the app, right? So these are like the variables that we need, right? We need to like have a to-do, mark it as completed. Well, we got this stuff up here too. We need to like filter. So maybe let's add another one. Let's say let filter. So right now it's all. So let's say it's all. And so this can be all completed, well, active or completed, right? So this filter corresponds to these elements up here. And when the user clicks on different filters, we're going to update these, and then we need to have proper logic to sort of use this filter to actually filter through the to-dos. All right, this seems like a good start for us in terms of capturing the state of the application. Let's go and focus on another part. So we have like a state. We're going to think about how the state gets transferred into the UI, and then the last thing I do is to add some user interaction there, right? So maybe we can start by just like rendering the to-dos. So let's say function render to-dos, right? And so this function is supposed to like create the UI elements that actually shows the to-do text and whatever else that's associated with to-dos. So before I even get to implement it, I want to, well, I can do that at the end. Let's go and try to implement it a little, and then we'll come and talk about this more. So we got to go over every to-do. That's the most obvious thing. So let's just start with like a for loop. So let I be 0, I be less than to-dos dot length, and I plus plus. And then let's go and say const to-do is to-dos at I. And I could have written this for loop in a few different ways, using like enhanced for loop or a for each loop on the to-dos array. But it's the simplest, sort of the most familiar syntax of a loop that you've seen. And when we get hold of a to-do, then let's go in our HTML actually. Let's open the developer console. Let's remind ourselves of like how this structure is laid out. So I have a section, right? I have a section with the ID of to-do list, and each to-do is basically like a div inside of this section, right? Okay, so we need to get hold of this section, right? Let's go and do like const, what is it called again? To-do list. Let's call it to-do list element, and be like document get element by ID, and give it the ID of to-do list. Okay, once we got hold of this element, maybe what we would like to do is actually let's like wipe off everything that's in it. So .inner HTML, let's set that to empty, and then we have a blank slate that we can start adding our to-do elements to it. And so if you look at what is inside of it, I've got like a div for each of the to-dos. So let's go and like create that const. This is called to-do item. So to-do item document dot create element, and this is a div. Okay. So once I created this, well, it has some class attributes. We can add those. Class list, add. And we can go and say, so there are two things, P for the padding, and then the to-do item. Okay. And it seems that's all this div does. It's sort of a wrapper around two other elements, right? So before I move forward, I can add this to the parent class. So the to-do list elements, we can say append child and add this to the item to it. Then we can go and see what we need inside the to-do item. So we got two more elements in there. Let's copy this and adjust it. So the first thing is the to-do text is this div. So still a div, but let's rename it to like to-do text. And make sure you update it here, you update it here. Actually, we want to add this to the to-do item, right? So this is inside of a to-do item, right? Okay. And the classes for it is just to-do text. So take this off and change this to to-do text. And then the other thing is that it actually has the text of the to-do. So we can go and say to-do text content and set that to to-do text. So this has the actual text of our to-do. And then we got this one more input element which is hidden. All right, so let's go and create another item. We can call this to-do edit, and let's not forget to update these variables. It is still is added to the to-do item, right? So they're like these two elements together added to to-do item. So the class list for it is hidden and to-do edit. So let's give it hidden and to-do edit. And it has a value attribute. So rather than text content, we do value, and its value is the same as the text of the to-do. Okay, so this is our to-dos, like rendering the to-dos, right? And I can go and like call this function down here. And when I call it, it should actually like render my to-dos. Now this is not hard coded anymore. This is coming from my JavaScript file. Like if I change this to coffee and save it, you're going to see that the first one is changed to coffee. And I ended up creating the exact same structure as what I had in my index.html. Right. Now, one thing I wanted to talk about was this idea of like calling this function. Like when the app runs, you need to call render to-do to like display whatever to-do that you have at that point. And this works fine right now, but a better way of doing this, and I want to show you that better way, is like this. You can say document, add event listener, and then give it a event of DOM content loaded, and then call. So maybe I put this like this so you can see it better on the screen. So what is this? Let me explain this to you. You see, our render to-do relies on getting hold of some of the elements like the to-do list from the document. That means when you run this element, the to-do list, is supposed to exist in the page. If it doesn't, this is going to end up being undefined. Then you're going to try to do something with the undefined, and your HTML basically, your JavaScript will like break down on line 16. And so you're not going to see anything here. Now, if you notice, we have added the script tag at the end of the body of HTML. And one of the reasons we do it this way is so that the browser loads everything else, and then it goes about loading the script, because we may do something in the script that relies on the other element having been loaded in the page. Such as here, the example where like render to do actually requires getting hold of an element in the HTML. Now this typically works, but there may be cases like you have maybe other JavaScript file that are supposed to like build something, and then some other HTML files rely on those things that are being built. There may be some sort of a race condition, and it could be in such a situation, it could be that a function would try to get hold of an element that has not had a chance of being actually loaded into the page. So to get around issues like this, there is a special event that gets fired up when the browser is done basically creating the page. When everything is loaded, the browser will fire up this event. And so you can tune in and add an event listener to it and say, all right, I'm going to like do things that depend on the content of the HTML being loaded only after the content actually has been loaded. So this is a better practice, a better way of hooking up our UI function to our document. Okay, so right now we've got a functionality to actually like render the to-dos that we have. One of the things that we can do here is like the by jam is it's completed, the status is true, and we probably need some way of signaling that to the user. That is a user facing state. It's not something like ID that it's for us internally and we don't necessarily need to show it to the user. So we can do this in a few different ways. Like maybe we can like change the color of it, put a check mark next to it. I'm gonna go and like put a line through it, sort of like how on paper you cross off something that you completed. So we can maybe go here and make this conditional. We can say if the to-do is completed, then you want to add another attribute, and that one, the Tailwind CSS has a line through attribute, and you can see here, you see there's a line through by jam, right? And so if like you go and flip more of this, you're gonna get more of them with a line through. Okay, so that makes our rendering ToDo more complete. Now, one other thing I want to do still in this video, I don't want this to become a very long one, but maybe we can take care of actually adding ToDos, and for filterings we do that in the next video. So let's go and think about how we can add a new ToDo. So the way the user interaction works, right? So the user goes here and maybe types something like buy, and then they probably like hit enter, and they expect that this like gets added to the list of the ToDos. So we can go and try to get hold of this element up here. So let's see, what is it called? Okay, it's an input with ID of new ToDo. Let's go and get this document dot get element by ID, and it's called new ToDo. And we can go and do const new ToDo input. So we get hold of it, and then we got to add an event listener to it. So when the user interacts with it, we actually capture that interaction, and if appropriate, update the state. So we can go for a number of different events. The one I'm going to go for is key down, which is a very common one when you want to work with or respond to different actions on keyboard. So key down literally means somebody presses a key down. That's it. And so we need to create like a function for it. So function, let's call this handle new ToDo key down. Okay, and I'm gonna pass this here. All right, so now if somebody like goes and presses any key here, this event listener will call this function and actually provides an event argument to it. And the event object is going to have a lot of different attributes attached to it, including event key, event.key. And when a user goes and like types something like buy milk, they obviously going to be pressing the keys on their keyboard. I don't want to bother with any of those. The part that I want to react to is when they hit enter. So I can say if event key is enter. That's when I want to do something about it. Otherwise, I'm just going to ignore that. Okay, so if they actually pressed enter, then I want to see what they wrote, right? And so I'm going to need to have this new ToDo input again. I can get hold of it the way I did it here. I'm going to show you another way that you can do the same thing in this context, which is, so this would be a scope just to this function. So it doesn't matter that we're redefining, like basically recycling the same variable name. This is locally a scoped, but you can do event.target. And so event.target will basically say what was the target element that the event occurred on. So once you get this, then from this you can get the value in it. That would be whatever the user wrote here. So this will be a string, and we can store it in like ToDo text, right? And here's another sort of a handy trick. It could be like maybe the user like accidentally presses enter, or maybe they like press enter beforehand. And if you want to clean this up, there's a string function called trim, and it does exactly what the name says. It basically wipes off the spaces around that text, and that's a nice thing to do. And so once we got this, then we actually want to go and like add a new ToDo in our ToDos array. So go here and say todos.push. So this will be added to the end of our ToDo, and we're going to give it an object. So this object is going to have 3 attributes, right? It's going to have an ID, it's going to have a text, and it's going to have a completed. And so when you create a new ToDo, obviously its completed should be false at that point. The text is going to be this text, and the ID, it's going to be this next ToDo ID that is ready to be assigned to a new ToDo. So I'm going to grab this, use it here. And by the way, I would want to update this so it's ready to be used next time. So for example, you can come here and say this is plus equal 1. Or if you want to showcase your programming skills, you can put like an increment here. This means use this value first, and then increment it. All right. So once we added the new to-do, right? So the user interacted, the state changed. We need to update the UI. So we got to go and actually call our render to-dos function again. So we come here and call it again. So save this and let's go and see if we can, like, let's refresh this page and clean this up first. So I got buy coffee, buy bread, buy jam, let's say buy milk. Okay, so when I hit enter, it appears here. I don't like it that it is still, like, after I captured it, it still exists in the text input. So what you can do is after, like, you pushed it, you can, well, it's the new to do input. You can reset it like value and make it empty. So let's go and say buy milk. There you go. So we got the buy milk and this is cleaned up. And I just thought of something else. You know, if we go and, like, this is silly, but if, like, we put a bunch of a space and hit enter, this actually gets added. Like, there's a new to do, but it doesn't have any text, right? And that doesn't make sense. So what you want to do, you probably want to guard against a situation like this. You can say if, like, to do text is empty, then just return. Don't do any of these things, right? So if I go here and put a bunch of spaces and hit enter, nothing is going to happen. Okay, maybe we can even, like, bring this condition up here. So I can like get hold of this, bring it up, put this here and say if that's the case and it's not empty, then do this. All right, let's give our app a try. Take this out. So let's go and say something like another test, and then let's put like a space, blah blah blah, space, and when we hit, it just takes that thing. It doesn't take the spaces, and if we just do a space and hit enter, it's just not going to take it. Okay, I think we made good progress on building our application, and so we can wrap up the video here, and we'll focus on actually, like, filtering through the to-dos in the next video.